All right, we hear the Committee on Overtures and Cases, the report on returns, and the Principal Clerk will move the report, and any questions will go to the Theological Forum.
Thank you, Moderator. I present the report of the Committee of Overtures and Cases on the return to Overture May 2024, and I move the deliverance.
Seconded.
And as the Moderator said, all questions to my learned friends at the table.
Already we have a question and a comment on screen, so and I'm going to get the pronunciation wrong, so please forgive me in advance. I'm not sure, is it Mark McKeown? You can please correct me. That's you.
Moderator, McKeown, 173, you did get it right, Mark McKeown. And my question is, the Westminster Larger and Shorter Catechisms have been approved and commended by the Kirk at previous General Assemblies. Can you comment on their historic and ongoing status within the Church of Scotland? Thanks.
I thank Mr McKeown for his comment and question. Yeah, during our consultation with presbyteries, individuals, other forums within the church, a number of times people have raised the question of the status of the catechisms, shorter and larger catechism, and other documents associated with the Westminster Standards and parts of the early post-Restoration Church of Scotland. And the shorter catechism and the larger catechism have not held the same status as the Westminster Confession within our tradition. They've been spoken of warmly in the Assembly, they've been commended by the Assembly, but they've not been subordinate standards, and therefore their status as compared with the Westminster Confession is slightly different. But in our negotiations with Glasgow Presbytery and other folk, we've heard again and again in different ways a desire that the catechisms and the other documents mentioned in the second article, declaratory, along with the Westminster Confession, should not be forgotten about. That they are still important for our constituency of our church, and that we should not sideline them to history. And therefore, I think that no matter how else our proposals are interpreted, they should not be interpreted as dismissing any part of that rich theological tradition. And there's still a place for the shorter and larger catechism within the life of the Church of Scotland today. And we might be speaking about that later on in the debate, I believe.
Thank you. Now I'm going to put section 1 to receive a report. Then I'm going to call in Callum Martin, who's going to make a comment. Is the Assembly happy to receive the report? Okay, and Callum Martin, and online.
That's Callum Martin, number 039. Thank you, Moderator. This actually began as a comment, but it has subsequently sprouted a very small question mark at the end. And I would just like to begin by thanking the Forum, the Committee, for the evident depth of consideration that's gone into these proposals and these discussions. I think it's wonderful to see that the depth of consultation, the breadth of discussion, the range of voices, prayers, and wisdom that have gone into reaching this stage of the process. But my question/comment is in light of the point raised that we are approaching, this is a wonderful thing to have noticed, we are approaching the 1700th anniversary of the Nicene Creed, which is a wonderful thing to note. I was interested that in the report, it's evident, particularly from points 3.4 and 3.10, that there are ongoing conversations of different natures and different patterns around the filioque clause, conversations which are theological, conversations which are ecumenical, and I thank the committee and the forum for their very discerning responses to those reports. I think they were very, very well put and capture the spirit of what's intended. But what I just wanted to ask, this would have been a comment, it's now a question, in light that we are approaching that 1700th anniversary, is there any thought towards tying in those two patterns, that as we explore the creeds and putting them together in a new format for the church to engage with and use, is there been any kind of thought or possibilities about tying that in with the 1700th anniversary of the original Nicene Creed, which I appreciate is kind of, in context of a Filioque clause, one which is slightly different from that which emerged with the Filioque clause included. Now, it's just the comment, therefore, the question, therefore, is whether there's any opportunity to bring that anniversary and a particularly unique opportunity to explore the creed's place in the church today. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for that comment/question. And it's one I'm very personally interested in. And on Saturday, during the debate of ecumenical relations, and we heard from the convener not too long ago, one of the deliverances was actually trying to explore the significance of the Nicene Creed for today, along with ourselves and with ecumenical relations. And although preparations are still kind of ongoing, and there's nothing definite yet, the plan is to have a series of events and initiatives next year. First of all, to explore the role of the Nicene Creed within our own denomination, but also to look at the way in which it actually informs the theology of multiple denominations, in fact, most denominations in Scotland in some way or another. And there'll be different aspects to that. There'll be an actual probably conference day of some kind. There may actually be an act of worship where the Nicene Creed is actually recited, in a liturgical worship format with different denominations, different backgrounds, acknowledging our shared faith, That's something as well that ties into our Westminster proposals, which we'll come to. But there's also potentially going to be some research being done as well into the role of the Nicene Creed within Scotland today. And that's something that may be happening later this year and into early 2025. So there's a whole range of different things in the pipeline. And I'm looking as well at our ecumenical delegates over here, because actually they will be part of that too. It'd be really good to dialogue more with you about that. And part of that will be the Filioque cause as well. I mean, I'm conscious that we have probably about 3 or 4 people on the forum who've taught the Filioque at different points in their university careers. And as we said in our comments, and I've said here as well, I believe, at the Assembly in the past, the idea is that we will actually, talk a little bit about that debate within the Book of Confessions, and we'll make it clear the fact that this is one area where Christians have slight disagreements, and to make that clear, in whatever we produce. But yes, I'm pleased to say there are things in the pipeline. We look forward to working with our ecumenical partners, and hopefully see you at the events.
Right, thank you. Another comment, Stuart Gillen.
Thank you, Moderator Gillen, 476. I was talking with John McPake at the moderator's lunch yesterday and saying that in the old city of Jerusalem already, some of the heads of the churches have been speaking about the 17th centenary of Nicaea. There have been a lot of Easter greetings. On the Western calendar, Easter greetings to the Latin Patriarchy, and then all of the Orthodox ones just recently, 5 weeks apart. And it was the Latin Patriarch who was able to turn to the Greek Patriarch and say, next year, it's all on the same day, and we will be together. And it was in that context he brought in Nicaea, and that they had already begun. And it sent me back, because I have to say, and again in liturgy, I don't know if once in my 38 years I've ever used the Nicene Creed instead of the Apostles' Communion, for example. Anyway, when it comes to Jesus Christ, God from God, light from light. And I thought, well, you don't have to be a scholar in the ancient languages to get into light from light. It throws us back to the creation, and John's prologue would take us to the word being active in creation. The same light that says to his followers, you are the light. So are Jesus' followers light from light. And at that, in that way, which is more elusive and perhaps evocative, try to involve our people in the strength of the Nicene Creed as a formulation of how we understand the experience of faith.
Thank you.
Yes, I'd like to thank Dr. Gillen for those comments. And some commissioners may not know, but Dr. Gillen actually was my predecessor at St. Michael's Linlithgow. And it's quite funny that we've recently had our crown of thorns refurbished to stop it from falling down into my manse and killing us all. And but I will be preaching on a very topic soon at the Thanksgiving service about "You are the light of the world." And it's really interesting you connected there the creedal affirmation of being God from God and light from light with that call that we need to be light, and the fact that we are continuing Christ's mission in the world. And there's lots of different things that can come from that. But first of all, I think the most important one is that the Nicene Creed is not some just dusty creedal statement from 1700 years ago. I mean, who wants to be interested in reading something that's 1700 years old? It's not exactly modern or contemporary or anything. But actually, when you look at the spread of faith today in Scotland, and you kind of even out everything that people believe and they do, the Nicene Creed comes pretty close to being the center of the faith. And this is not actually a peripheral creedal statement at all. It's actually something that animates a lot of the faith and lived out experience of people in the Christian community in Scotland. And every Christmas as well, we sing that very line, God from God, light from light, in the Christmas carol. And I think that whatever we do with regard to the Nicene Creed, and coming back to the previous comment, whatever we do, it has to be making this clear that this is a relevant contemporary statement and not something dry and dusty from the past. So thank you for those comments.
Thank you. Can we move to section 2.1? Assembly agree? Okay, and online? Online, thank you. Now, Clark.
Got the right, oh, blimey, I haven't got the right glasses on. Anyway, right, we have got an amendment to section 2.2 in the print in the name of Mr. Nash. And I'm going to read this out to you guys. So this amendment starts at, when we get to Appendix B, so the end of section 2.2 in the print. This is what's being added in. And I'm going to sit down, hopefully, because I can't read that. If that's okay, moderator. Okay.
We will forgive you, Clark.
Thank you. Got to swap the glasses now. So, and also amended. So this is an amendment to the overture as stated in Appendix B, and also amended as follows. At 1.1, in relation to Article 2, after 2, the subordinate standards of the Church of Scotland are contained in its Book of Confessions. Add, the Book of Confessions contains the Apostles' Creed, the Nicene Creed, the Scots Confession, the Westminster Confession of Faith, and the 1992 Statement of Faith. At 4.1, change the last paragraph of the preamble from that in the print to the subordinate standards of the Church of Scotland are contained in its Book of Confessions. The Book of Confessions contains the Apostles' Creed, the Nicene Creed, the Scots Confession, the Westminster Confession of Faith, and the 1992 Statement of Faith. The Church recognises liberty of opinion on such points of doctrine as do not enter into the fundamental doctrines of the faith, claiming the right, independence on the promised guidance of the Holy Spirit to formulate, interpret, or modify its subordinate standards, always in agreement with the Word of God and the fundamental doctrines of the Christian faith expressed in the Apostles' and Nicene Creeds, of which the Church itself shall be sole judge. Thank you, moderator.
Right, Mr. Nash, do you wish to speak to your amendment? Is it secondary, first of all? Okay, does he wish to speak? Oh, he's online. Hello.
Moderator, we're just finding him. We believe he's online, and we'll bring him in shortly.
There we go. Welcome, we've got you eventually.
Thank you, moderator. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you fine. Give your name and number, please.
Graham Nash, 313, Parish Minister in Cambusbarron. Good to be with you. Joining online, there's quite a lot of us online, so it's great to be with the Assembly. I'm very sorry that the text is so small that you're probably struggling to see it and hard to read. It's got a lot longer since breakfast time because we've been discussing it between myself and Dr. Fraser on behalf of the Theological Forum. And the text that is before the Assembly has been proposed by Dr. Fraser as the best way of achieving what I would like to do, which is actually a lot simpler than it looks. Perhaps the best way of explaining this to the Assembly is, if it's possible to put up on the screens, the next subsection of the deliverance, if it's possible to put that wording up on the screens.
Mr. Nash, did you mean section 2.3?
Yes, please.
Do we have? I'm afraid it's not prepared. We've just got this at the minute. Can I help?
I'm quite happy to read it if that's okay, but if you would like to. Section 2, subsection 3, about halfway through that subsection contains these words. So this is what we're already being asked to do in the next subsection. Noting for the avoidance of doubt that the Book of Confessions referred to in the Overture will contain the Apostles' Creed, the Nicene Creed, the Scots Confession, the Westminster Confession of Faith, and the 1992 Statement of Faith. So that will be coming a little later, hopefully quite soon, before us. All that I'm really seeking to do is to lift that from the deliverance, which will fairly shortly just disappear, and put it into the Overture, so that we can have it in two particular places, so that it appears in the Articles Declaratory, first of all, that statement. And the Book of Confessions contains the Apostles' Creed, the Nicene Creed, the Scots Confession, the Westminster Confession of Faith, and the 1992 Statement of Faith. So just for clarity, it would go into the Articles Declaratory so that we know what the Book of Confessions is. And then the second place it would go, we could have put it in quite a few other places, but I'm suggesting that we simply put it into the preamble, which is part of the service of ordination. This would be, as far as I can tell, the first time that the Book of Confessions would be referenced within that service. And it would be an opportunity for us just to explain within that service, the subordinate standards of the Church of Scotland are contained in its Book of Confessions. This is the new bit. The Book of Confessions contains the Apostles' Creed, the Nicene Creed, the Scots Confession, the Westminster Confession of Faith, and the 1992 Statement of Faith. And then it carries on just really as it was, with a couple of very minor changes, I think, that Dr. Fraser's made just to make it grammatically correct. So that is really all that I'm proposing to do. It's just to ensure that what we are noting for the avoidance of doubt will become part of the Articles Declaratory and will be included in the service of ordination, so that we make it clear what we mean when we come to the vows of ordination, when we're asked to confess the Catholic and Reformed faith of the Church. So I'm bringing this to the Assembly, but it's really actually coming from the presbyteries, because if you've had a look at the report, quite a lot of the report is giving us comment from presbyteries. When we put something down under the Barrier Act, we then discuss it in presbyteries. Many of us have taken part in those discussions. And it's good for us to be able to reflect on comments that come back to the Assembly from the presbyteries. And one of the comments made, it's actually at point 3.11 of the report, is a comment that asks us to make clear, let me find the actual quote, Presbytery noted that it would be helpful if the Act specified the particular confessions included in the Book of Confessions to ensure clarity as to the nature of the subordinate standards. And so all that I'm proposing to the Assembly is that we put into action what a presbytery, and I think actually more than one presbytery have asked us to consider. So that's all I wish to say, Moderator. So I'd like to, I think, propose the amendment, and I've agreed a seconder.
Is there a seconder? Seconded. Is there any comment, although I've got an indication that the convener may be inclined to accept? Yeah, as long as you're not closing the debate, just in case there's any discussion. No questions or comments? Nothing online? Okay, convener, you are now closing the debate.
Thank you. Moderator, I want to thank Mr Nash for his proposed amendment and also for his kindness in negotiating its wording. It's much appreciated. This might appear to be a very kind of pedantic sort of amendment that's being proposed, but it's actually quite important, I think. And that's because Mr Nash's amendment helps to clarify the overture and to clarify its intentions. It does this by detailing the contents of the Book of Confessions in the Articles Declaratory, and its proposed amendment of the preamble means that office holders and congregations will be reminded of the contents of the book whenever office holders are ordained or inducted. The precise wording of his amendment also has the benefit of ruling out certain misinterpretations of the preamble. And for these reasons, we not only accept Mr Nash's amendment, but we urge the Assembly to approve it.
Thank you. The convener is happy to accept the amendment. Is that the mind of the Assembly? And online? Agreed. Thank you. We then take section 2.3 as in the print. Oh, sorry, 2.2 as amended. That, no, we're just done there. 2.2 as amended. Just confirm then, just for clarity, that we've agreed the amended 2.2. And online, and then move to 2.3. Agreed, and online. And then we've got the introduction of a new section. And that's in, is that in the name of Donald or Mark McCowan? Okay.
Okay. Moderator, McKeown, 173. Moderator, this new section of deliverance is simply asking to make available documents already referred to in the second article declaratory, make them available to the church. I'll read the new section for you. Instruct the Theological Forum to produce an online companion volume to the Book of Confessions containing the additional documents mentioned in the second article declaratory, namely the Directive of Public Worship of God, the form of Presbyterial Church government, and the form of process, and the Westminster larger and shorter catechisms. If you've read the second article declaratory, you'll notice that we've been focusing really on the first bit of that, what is our subordinate standard and our confession, but it goes on to mention some more documents, and I think it would be useful to the church to have these documents made available, and I'm proposing that we do that using an online companion volume to the Book of Confessions. In addition to the documents listed by the second article declaratory, I'm proposing that we do also include the Westminster larger and shorter catechisms. I'm thankful to the convener for his response to my earlier question, clarifying their status, and I agree that they are different from being a subordinate standard, but yet, as the report states, and as the convener said, they've had an important part in the history of our church, and they contain value as a resource for some within the church. Indeed, many printed editions of the Westminster Confession include the catechisms along with other Westminster standards. And if you've got a copy of the PCUSA's Book of Confessions, you'll find both the larger and shorter catechisms in that. Producing this as an online PDF or web-based resource should mean that this can come efficiently in terms of cost to the church and should make it widely available to add value to the church. So I move this new section of deliverance. I've arranged for a seconder who is online, Reverend Dr. Philip Wright, 184.
Okay, thank you. Can someone confirm that's been seconded online? Yep, thank you, Neil. That has been seconded. I've got notice of a comment in the name of Donald McEwen.
Moderator Donald McEwen, 274. Chaplain at St Andrews University and a former convener of the Theological Forum, and indeed it was when I was convener and Liam was a member that these conversations began. It's been a long process. And indeed, during that process as a Theological Forum, we read the larger and shorter catechisms and many of the other Westminster standards and found them very profitable for our deliberations on the status of confessional standards within the Church of Scotland. Nevertheless, despite enjoying reading those and discussing them, I would resist this additional item of deliverance, partly because what the Church of Scotland has been doing over these years through receiving the overture, listening to the Theological Forum, and now this Double Barrier Act procedure. What the Church is doing is adding other things beyond the Westminster standards to our confessional standards. We're going backwards to the Nicene and Apostles' Creed, backwards, but as it were, reaffirming them as being of huge significance to us, not only as a Reformed church, but as part of an ecumenical family of churches around the world. But we're also looking more recently to 1992, and indeed some who were involved in drafting that are in the Assembly Hall today. That's a living document from our own time. And not forgetting the Scots Confession, a really terrific piece of work, partly by John Knox, indeed almost wholly by John Knox, which bears great study. And it's great, I think I'm really delighted that a Book of Confessions is en route for the Church of Scotland. If we were at the same time to put on the Church of Scotland's official website all the rest of the Westminster standards, I think we would look as if we're going in two directions at the same time. Not only would we be broadening away from one Westminster standard into the five that we're looking to have, still retaining the Westminster Confession of Faith, but we would also at the same time be almost making important again in a new way those Westminster standards belonging to that particular historical moment of the Church. And this is a process which in some ways has realised after about 50 years in the Church of Scotland that it's time to modify and broaden our standards. And so for these reasons, I think it would actually be too much of a backward step to put these officially in a single place on our church website at the same time as we do this. They're easily accessible through any search engine. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other requests to speak? Okay, then the original mover of the motion, if you would like to reply, and then I'll call upon the convener.
173. Thank you. I just want to highlight again that, to state clearly that I'm not opposed to a Book of Confessions and the broadening of that and really the intent of this overture, nor do I want to delay what this overture is doing. I'm simply highlighting that in the second article to clarity, which we are amending in this overture, that we mention a number of documents, those being the Directive of Public Worship of God, the form of the Presbyterial Church Government, and the form of process. Some of those documents, in particular the form of process, is incredibly hard to find. I'm grateful to a Presbytery clerk who was able to provide it to me, but it is not easy to find and cannot be found within the Church of Scotland. So I would therefore argue that it is important that we at least make these documents available since we reference them. And I did add, in addition to that, for the historic reasons, the two catechisms of the Westminster standards, the larger and shorter catechisms. But at the very least, I think we have a duty to make the documents mentioned in Articles to Clarity available to the Church. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Convener.
I want to thank the commissioners for those different comments. Coming back to the discussion we had earlier on about the consultation we had with presbyteries in particular, one of the things that Glasgow Presbytery came back with was the idea that there should be an appendix to the Book of Confessions, by which I mean that you have the Book of Confessions here, and then sort of at the end of the Book of Confessions, you have this appendix. And we resisted that idea because I think probably for the reason that Donald McEwen, my predecessor, is indicating. We resisted that because it would essentially be a way into the Book of Confessions by the back door. And that's kind of what we felt about it. And actually subject to different procedures for adding or amending or modifying the text than would actually hold for the actual Book of Confessions itself. So we thought it made it quite confusing. So we've rejected attempts to try and raise up these historic documents to be the same level as the other subordinate standards, or to be kind of aping them in some way. However, I do take the point of the proposer of the motion that actually, if these documents are named within our Constitution, if they're actually named in the Articles Declaratory, it doesn't seem unreasonable to me that they would be accessible in some way. And that's particularly the case. Certainly, our other comment was correct, that the Westminster Shorter and Larger Catechisms are readily available, but actually some of the other documents aren't. I mean, the former process, I just had a conversation before this debate began with some people in the Principal Clerk about what is this thing that's in our Constitution. And I have read it, but as you said, it was very difficult to track it down. And likewise, one or two of the other documents are actually mentioned explicitly within the second article declaratory. So it's very much the Assembly's will as to what it wants to do. And I think there's pros and cons for both. But certainly I'm not opposed to what the actual motion is saying if the Assembly chooses to go that way.
All right, thank you. I think we're going to go with an electronic vote in this one because I'm starting to get a wee bit confused around about. So, Vice Convener.
Sheila Kirk, 532. The moderator has called for an electronic vote on this amendment, which is up on the screen. If you are voting on the hub, the buttons for and against will appear on the current live debate page. The green one for the amendment, red one against the amendment. When you press the button, it will show a tick that shows you have voted. If you are in the hall, you'll be using the Bluetooth device, and you will be using button 1 if you are voting for, and button 2 if you are voting against. The vote is now open. Ten seconds remaining. The vote is now closed.
We voted for 220 and against 123. So the Assembly has agreed for. And then the deliverance as a whole. Right, thank you very much. And online.